everybody. So here we're going to do more of a quick review on the four main macromolecule nutrients. Obviously that plays a role since digestion, we're all about breaking this down. We covered this earlier in the year, and so this really should just be a review. So your body's quick source of energy is carbohydrates. And so some examples. Might be things like pasta or bread. Obviously, there are a lot of different examples. So we found that we have two main types of carbohydrates. We have what we consider simple carbohydrates, and we have what we consider complex carbohydrates. And the real difference is ultimately how easily they are processed and broken down by the digestive system. So when we're talking about the simple carbohydrates, we're talking about things that are single sugar molecules, things like glucose or fructose. Those are probably the two most common. There is a third really simple sugar that is called maltose. It's a disaccharide, and then we also have sucrose, which is the table sugar you'd buy at the grocery store. That's still considered a simple sugar. Lactose, like what we talk about when we talk about people who have lactose intolerance to milk because they don't have the enzyme to properly break that down, that would also fall into the simple sugars. Okay, and then we have the complex sugars, and these are chains of simple carbs. And a lot of times people will say carbs instead of carbohydrates just because it's shorter and easier. We all know that are joined together. So when we take and put a lot of glucose molecules together, or glucose and fructose, things like this, we make what we call a polysaccharide. Polysaccharide simply means many sugars. And so our starches, if you eat a lot of potatoes, you eat a lot of starch. A starch is a complex carbohydrate. And so you always hear people encouraging, if you're going to eat your carbs, you want to make sure you have lots of complex carbohydrates, because complex carbohydrates, because there's so many joined together, they're going to take more effort and more time to break down. So it's not like you're just suddenly getting quite as heavy of a hit of that quick energy as if you're eating the simple ones. Okay, then we're going to move over here to proteins. Okay, sorry. So proteins will build muscles, skin, hair, nails, enzymes. These are really our structural molecules. So when you talk about the human body, most of the structures and things we're talking about, these are built out of proteins. We can also use them to create energy, but we don't like to waste them if we don't have to. Enzymes, obviously I said enzymes, but we don't like to waste them for energy when we have other sources of energy to use. So understand that while proteins can give you energy, typically proteins are not utilized by the body for energy except in a last case scenario. So if they don't have any other energy sources, then they're going to move into protein use. I know that is a major misconception we get all the time, where people are like, oh, well, if I don't have energy, I need to eat more protein. Or, of course, they always talk about, well, yeah, I like to eat protein bars because they give me lots of energy. Well, look at the ingredients on those protein bars, and there's typically a lot of simple sugars and other carbohydrates in those protein bars. You're getting the energy from the carbohydrates, but the proteins are very important because they give you the building blocks to build new structures or to repair structures. Okay, next we want to talk about fats. So let me get that shifted, and here we go. So when it comes to fats, these are important for cell membranes, remember the key structure of the cell membrane. The majority of the cell membrane is made up of that phospholipid bilayer. Lipids are our fats. And they are also really important for energy storage. And so this gives us more of a long-term energy storage and source, whereas the carbohydrates are normally our quick source. So if we have extra energy, we can store it away for later. And if we get in a situation where we run out of energy, we can pull it out of our fats, out of our adipose tissue. Remember, that's where we store our fats, our lipids. And so we can pull it out and use it to take care of things. And so some examples could be butter. We all like a good bit of butter. Olive oil. And most of our oils, olive oil, are lipids. That's part of what makes them oils. So typically within the fats, you hear people talk a lot of times about unsaturated versus saturated, and they talk about how unsaturated lipids are better for you than saturated lipids and things like that. So one of the main differences, if you're just at the store and you're trying to buy something and you don't know which is which, is that unsaturated are typically liquid at room temperature. And many times the unsaturated are going to come from fish and plants, things like that. The saturated are typically solid at room temperature. And they're going to come from a lot of other animal products. So even butter is made from milk, which comes from an animal. Okay. As to what physically is different is saturated, when we're looking at the chains of how these are built, they all have single bonds, whereas the unsaturated are going to have some double and triple bonds in them, and those kind of cause them to bend, so it's almost like crumpling up a paper versus having it lie flat. And so that's the reason it's going to be liquid, whereas the saturated would be more like just a nice flat stack of paper, and so they stack up nice and neat. That's what makes them solids. And then the last part I want to talk about when it comes to nutrients is our vitamins and minerals, because we all know they always talk about, well, we need to make sure we have plenty of vitamins and minerals. And remember, this is just kind of a quick summary. This is not a detail on all of this. But these are nutrients that your body needs in small amounts. So you should not be having lots and lots and lots of vitamins or minerals. They are required for repair, growth, and proper body function. So, for example, we hear people talk about that they have anemia. Well, there's actually multiple types of anemia. We talked about that with some of the blood stuff. But you can have iron deficient anemia, which means you're not getting enough iron. Iron is a mineral. There are also types of anemia based on not having enough B12 vitamin, so it's not maturing properly, or enough folic acid. So if you don't have the necessary vitamins and minerals, it really can cause major problems. So some of our examples would be vitamin C, iodine, magnesium, we know we need sodium, we know we need chloride, we need vitamin A, vitamin B12, B6, folic acid, thiamine. We've got all sorts of different vitamins and minerals that are needed. Okay, so hopefully this kind of gives you a summary of that.